Today's video is gonna be a pretty fast one, but there's been a lot of incorrect information going around regarding AMD's Ryzen 9000 CPUs. For starters, people seem to be bashing reviewers because they use DDR5 6000 memory, saying that they should have used faster memory because it technically supports up to 8000. Now, while that may sound like a given, it's simply not true. Let me explain directly from AMD's own reviewer's guide. As you can see right here, this is the official reviewer's guide from AMD sent to me for their Ryzen 9700X and 9600X reviews. And let's go ahead and make our way down to the memory overclocking section. Actually, before I even get to that, for anyone who may not know, AMD technically only supports with Ryzen 9000 DDR5 up to 5200 megatransfers per second. Anything over that is actually considered an overclock, and at least the last time I've heard, that does void your warranty. And yes, that actually includes Expo memory. Now, with that out of the way, your memory frequency or memory clock is basically separated and split up into three different things, or at least it's connected together with three different things: your Infinity Fabric clock, your memory controller clock, and your DRAM frequency or memory clock. Now, originally what you wanted was to have all of these connected at a 1:1:1 ratio, but eventually they made it where the Infinity Fabric could work at auto, which basically just set the Infinity Fabric frequency to whatever was best based on your memory frequency. But it's still best to have your memory controller and DRAM frequency at a 1:1 ratio. And that is right down here. And really quickly, just to kind of reiterate this to show you, if you're at DDR5 4800, technically that's 4800 megatransfers per second, not megahertz. That is actually cut in half to 2400 megahertz. I know that this is confusing. That's a whole nother issue, but at 4800, your memory is running at 2400 megahertz. Then your memory controller is also running at 2400 megahertz. And then at this, your Infinity Fabric is running at 2000 megahertz. Then when we move over to 6000, you're running at 3000 megahertz memory, then 3000 megahertz, the memory controller, and then once again, 2000 megahertz on the Fabric. Well, as you can see right here, it says, once again, this is official from AMD. It says, for DDR5 memory frequency above 3000 megahertz, the default memory controller clock to memory clock ratio will be set to 1:2, meaning your memory controller's clocks will be cut in half. And obviously that heavily affects performance. As you can see right here, it says, to reiterate, the best performance result will likely be Fabric on auto and memory IMC running 1:1. As a result, DDR5 6000 is a sweet spot in the performance curve because it maximizes the performance of the tightest ratios, and the mature IC binning at 3000 megahertz allows for tighter timings. You'll find out in just one second that that is really important, as well as falling prices. Now, you are able to go up, or at least control that 1:1 ratio higher than DDR5 6000, but as you can see right up here, it says some, so not all. Some processors may be able to achieve Expo 6400 1:1 with manual settings. By default, a GISA will set any memory profile above 6000 megatransfers per second to a 1:2 mode, but you may override it. The issue is that stability of this configuration will vary based on your specific processor. So obviously they don't want reviewers reviewing these with stuff that could have major stability issues. Doesn't that kind of remind you of someone? With all of that said, I will say that there is at least a chance, if we're talking all the way up to, say, DDR5 8000, that I do know we've seen a little bit of this with Ryzen 7000. If you get way up there past like 7400, right around those areas, you do end up making up for the fact that your memory controller speed has been cut in half. But as they also state right down here, allows for tighter timings and falling prices. The issue is that, once again, don't forget that this was reviews for the mid-range 9700X and 9600X. So I would argue that if we use, say, some of the fastest memory, say DDR5 8000, I guarantee you that a lot of viewers would then get upset that we paired very fast DDR5 memory with more of a mid-range CPU. Basically, you're not going to get a ton more performance even with DDR5 8000, wild numbers like that. At least according to AMD, they're flat out saying that you're going to get, or at least maximize the performance that you're going to get from DDR5 6000. Oh, and really quickly on the timings part, I did mean to mention this. It actually talks about it right here. It says a latency optimized 1-to-1 expo memory profile will provide the best performance on a wide range of applications. Once again, 1-to-1 ratio, meaning 6,000 megatransfers per second. And yes, you can get up to 6,400, but then you're going to have issues with stability. Now, when I was talking about timings, it says if you desire to make further tweaks, AMD recommends trying to tighten the timings as much as possible while at auto 1-to-1. Once again, that's that 1-to-1 ratio. So yeah, hopefully that cleared up a little bit of misconceptions that people were having about Ryzen 9000. And really, once again, if there was going to be like tons more performance that you were going to get out of DDR5 8000, don't you think AMD would have given reviewers that memory? But they didn't. They told us just to use the regular DDR5 6000 that came with the Ryzen 7000 kits. And once again, I really think people would have been mad anyway if we used DDR5 8000 with more mid-range CPUs. I think you'd be better off just buying a higher tier CPU rather than spending that money on faster memory.